How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at The Exorcism of Emily Rose. This is from 2005 and is directed by Scott Derrickson. Scott Derrickson, if that name rings a bell, he's the same guy that did Sinister and The Black Phone. Both very, very good movies, and if you're watching this video around the time it comes out, The Black Phone should still be in theaters, and I definitely recommend checking it out. A very, very good movie. So today, we're looking at his earlier work. This stars Laura Linney, Tom Wilkinson, and Jennifer Carpenter as Emily Rose herself, Jennifer Carpenter from Dexter. This is about a girl who dies after a failed exorcism, and the police arrest the priest, saying he's responsible for her death because he pushed her too hard, and the movie centers around his lawyer. The lawyer has to get him out, has to argue the case and sometimes argue about spirituality, but also has to talk to witnesses, interview people, and try to figure out what exactly happened that day at the farm in order to get her client free. Now, she's hired by the church, and the church doesn't really want this to get out. They are worried about embarrassment, but the priest thinks the exact opposite. He says, the most important thing isn't what happens to me, but getting Emily Rose's story out. So they are going to have to go to court, and they are going to fight this out, and hopefully the story of what really happened that night will get out to the world. Overall, this movie came out pretty good, but I have to admit, this movie flew under my radar for a really long time. I think I had seen like bits and pieces of it on TV before, but I mean, how many movies are there that are The Exorcism of this person or The Haunting of that place? The title really seemed pretty generic, and why those movies aren't, bad, they're good for, usually just some, fun, haunted, spooky movies. I didn't really expect this would be near as good as it was, and I'm glad I finally watched it. I actually watched it because my cousin came over and we were looking for something to watch on TV, and I think this was streaming somewhere, and my cousin is a big fan of The Last Exorcism, and I'm like, hey, there's another Exorcist movie, let's watch that. And I didn't really expect too much of it. I thought, hey, just put something on TV. I'd even completely forgotten it was directed by Scott Derrickson, so I was in for quite a surprise. Actually, if I was a more on top of things YouTube channel, I would have done this video on purpose to capitalize off of Black Phone, but no, around here we just run on dumb luck, and I was like, oh hey, that's that guy from that movie I just watched. But anyway, yeah, it did really turn into a pretty interesting movie. Really good, really dark, and a really different kind of exorcism movie. I mean, it begins when the exorcism's over, right? But I like that they took this element from The Exorcist and kind of expanded upon it here. You see, The Exorcist is where a lot of exorcism movies came from. Before The Exorcist, demons weren't in movies too terribly much, and then after The Exorcist, big boom in possession movies. So a lot of the movies that follow really do owe a debt of gratitude to that. But there was this plot element in The Exorcist where the mother didn't believe in anything like evil spirits, and she goes and she tries everything. And, she goes to all the doctors, the situation's getting worse and worse, and she has to, learn to believe, because, she really doesn't think that. The church is saying, hey, look, we don't really do this anymore, and it really has to work to sell the idea that, this is an exorcism, the spiritual world is real, and this movie kind of takes that concept set up in The Exorcist and sort of plays that into the whole movie. The whole movie is about convincing essentially a jury to believe that it's real in a world where we tend to ignore the mysticals, so that is a really interesting element, a really interesting expansion. and also a exorcism movie that's a courtroom drama. It really is different. It's an excuse to set it in a new place, do a different set of things. You know, it's not the same exorcism movie again and again. They found a unique angle to shake things up a bit, which I really do like. I also do like that parallel storytelling where you have the present and then you have the past, and you get to, you know, find the little windows to the past. You know, someone will know part of the story, you know, either in an interview or a testimony, and you'll get to see a little bit. Yeah, it is kind of weird that they all happen to be in roughly the right order, but still, peeking into the past every now and then, and it somehow works despite the fact that we know where this is going. We don't know all the details or how bad it got. You know, really a smart decision to set it after the exorcism, that opening scene, rather than during it, because, you know, it all leads up to this exorcism, and even though we know the final outcome, we don't know all the pieces or how bad it got, and there really is a sense of tension as the past builds to what we know will eventually happen. And yeah, it somehow works despite the fact that we roughly do know. But yeah, I do like the parallel storytelling. That was really, really interesting here, you know, finding all the little pieces and stuff. And I also really did like the characters, you know. They did a clever thing where the lady representing the priest, is agnostic. She doesn't really know if she believes or not, and in turn, you know, having her sort of find her faith and going from just trying to control the bad situation to becoming more and more invested and believing in it more and more, that's really interesting. And then the guy, the prosecution, is actually a religious man. He really believes, yet he's going after this priest super, super hard, saying, hey, if he really does believe in God, if he really is a religious man, he should be willing to own up to what he did. So I do like how, you know, the defense and prosecution are on kind of opposite sides of the faith spectrum than you might suspect, you know, so that was, you know, kind of a fun little thing to do. And boy, the guy they got to do the prosecution, he goes really hard for it, a really scary lawyer, and, you know, he's a jerk, but they don't make him a cartoony jerk, but he comes in, he'll make, you know, very good points, and he really just digs in, and it really constantly feels like you're on the edge of losing this case. A pretty good human villain in an exorcism movie. But anyway, there are a few flaws. One is the exorcism itself is cool, it's kinetic, there's lots of energy behind it, but a lot of the horror before this was more subdued. Yeah, there were a few intense moments, but it was for the most part, you know, lots of low-key scary moments. And then you get to the exorcism and it gets crazy. I do wish there was a better scale, especially, you know, if they had found a way to put some stuff in the present that were a little bit over the top and crazy, just so that we worked up to this point so it didn't feel like it made a big jump. I mean, it is the big climactic scene, but it did kind of feel like a change of pace. And then plus putting more scares earlier is more scares, and that's fun. So I just wish there was a better build-up to the exorcism as far as scares and crazy and kinetic things go. And another flaw with this movie is I really wish we got to know Emily Rose herself a lot more. Emily Rose, dead at the start of the movie, and when we go to these flashbacks, there are people talking about the possession and exorcism. There's like one scene where she gets accepted into college and she's being a normal girl, and I really wish they had more of that so that we felt we got to know her more, and in turn we could be sad that she's dead and nervous in the flashback sequences. Establishing peacetime is pretty important, and I just wish we got to know Emily Rose a little more before all this happened to her. But I mean, that's just the story structure right there. I don't know how you would do that. But anyway, despite those two things, a really good, different Exorcist movie with a really glum and oppressive atmosphere and some good creepy moments. And hey, you know, non-standard, you know, two-timeline storytelling, that's always pretty cool. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the plot specifics. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers. I'll be avoiding the end, but I do want to analyze this a little further. So we're going to jump into the plot. We open up with this guy, and he's walking up to a creepy farm. Shots intentionally mirroring The Exorcist, you know, the famous scene on the poster. But when we get in, we find out he's not the exorcist. He's the coroner, the medical guy. And turns out the action is over. Emily Rose is dead, and there's no need for an exorcist anymore because we've gotten a bad ending and everything is all settled, you know? But he investigates the body and says that this wasn't just a regular natural death. She was pushed to this, and in turn, the priest that did the exorcism is in jail. Now, the church is very concerned about this and goes to their law firm, and the guy at the law firm gets this lady who's kind of on the edge of a promotion, and they say, hey, this case could be really big for you. This might be what helps you get up to partner. And they find out the church wants a few things. They don't want the priest to go on the stand because they're worried about getting embarrassed that he would come out and say some crazy things. So they say, keep the priest off the stand. They also say, if we could just settle this quietly, get a settlement out of court, that would be great. So she goes and talks to the priest, and they even have something where they're like, we'll reduce it to manslaughter, and he'll only get like 12 months. So not that bad a deal. But the priest says, I don't care what happens to me. They can throw me in jail for forever for all I care. It's not about me. Emily Rose was a person with a story, and her story needs to be told. So he only wants to go on the stand. He only wants to tell the world what happened to this poor girl. So yeah, no plea deal, and the church really doesn't want him to talk because you don't know what he's going to say, but that's what he wants, so they are going to have to go to court. And in here you do get some really good courtroom scenes, you know, and that's really what you want, where one of the lawyers will come up and question someone, and you'll be like, okay, that was pretty definitive. How are you going to come back from that? And then the other lawyer is really clever, and the other lawyer will come in and say, yeah, but what about this? And you're like, whoa, I didn't think of that. That's actually interesting. So there are a few examples, and I'm taking them from earlier in the movie. But one of them, they're talking to these doctors, and the first doctor says she had epilepsy, and I was giving her medication, and the priest said, stop taking the medication. And overall, that sounds pretty much like, oh, that's a bad thing for the priest. And then she goes up and says, so these are her symptoms. It's not entirely 100% sure she had epilepsy. Well, yeah, I guess not 100% sure. Well, if she didn't have epilepsy, taking that medication is very bad for her. So a really good comeback, you know. She should take her medicine. We don't know she had epilepsy. That could be really bad not taking it. And that was a really good angle. There was another doctor that comes on later that doesn't give up so easy. And he says she should have stayed working with us, and, you know, he's not going to relent like the last guy did. And she pushes him, and she says, so if you had a patient like this, and she had all these symptoms and she was really bad, and she didn't want to keep going, what would you do? And she basically gets this doctor to say, I would force her to come in against her will, strap her down, and use electroshock therapy. So she didn't get him to relent his point, but pushed the point so far that this doctor looked like a madman who wanted to kidnap a girl, you know? So I really did like how the arguing was done. But then after that, we do get the non-linear storytelling, which is pretty cool, you know, going to all these people, you know, in her college, and you get to see her, she's in a new place, you know, she came from a farm and now she's at college, and it's a new scary location for her, and you see, okay, she met a boy she kind of likes, and he'll be, someone who tells a story later on, but you see her getting creepy visions and seeing like black cloaked figures and then convulsing and contorting, because a good exorcist movie, you need a good bit of contortion there. So some pretty good scares. It doesn't go too crazy until the actual exorcism, but some good creepy scares and good creepy moments. And the priest in the present timeline does warn and say, hey, I'm worried if you get too close to it, the spirits may come after you as well. And she starts waking up and hearing noises at 3 a.m. every night. 3 a.m., the haunted hour, And overall, some good creepy sets. Your house in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., a big oppressive court building, a really good grungy jail. This movie has a really good sense of dark and oppressive atmosphere, and that really does help add to the scares. I really do like it, But over time, she learns a little bit, and she starts to get more and more attached, and I won't spoil the ending, but it does lead to a good, courtroom back and forth, and really just desperately, trying to find a way out with that prosecution. You always feel like you might be on the edge of losing this case, and she does go to a pretty big impassioned speech at the end, and it ends in a pretty interesting way, and again, I won't spoil it, but overall, really did get intense. They did the ghost stuff really well, or demon stuff rather. They did the courtroom stuff really well, and the flashback storytelling, it was all pretty cool. So even though I don't think this was like the absolute best movie ever, I felt it was really nice to do a demon possession movie in a completely different way than how we had seen it done before. And yeah, good grungy atmosphere, lots of stuff to like here. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my ghost/spirit/demons playlist. So if you want to see me talk about more stuff kind of like this, you can find that right here. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.